Sci-fi movies over the years have had no shortage of doomsday scenarios. These include alien attacks, robot uprising, or Thanos' finger snaps, just to name a few. But for a second, just imagine one of these scenarios actually occurring. And all humans are wiped out except two. One man and one woman. Do you think it's possible for them to repopulate the entire planet? Let's have a look at this in today's video. We all know the story in the Bible. Two people get it on and kick off mankind. Those two starstruck lovers were Adam and Eve, a couple who made their home in the Garden of Eden. We're not exactly sure what kind of resources they had to live in this garden, but let's hope it's a bit more than just forbidden fruit. If the old blue ball we called Earth didn't get whacked by an asteroid or experienced any other cataclysmic events, the two people would find several resources on this lonely planet. So let's dissect the question. Could just two people repopulate the Earth? Let's say when the apocalypse hit the planet, the two people who remained standing were in the prime of their lives and were not related. This automatically makes for a convenient situation. Studies have shown that children born to closely related parents have a higher infant mortality rate. Even if the children survive, there is a strong probability that they will be born with a deformity. But when you think about the future, all the children these two people create will be siblings. And to take the population forward, the children will have to mate with each other. Gross. We don't mean to get too taboo here, but this would be incest. It's not just disgusting, it's also harmful. According to a study of infants born in Czechoslovakia between 1933 and 1970, approximately 40% of those whose parents were first-degree relatives were seriously disabled, with 14% dying. However, time and again people have tried inbreeding, and we can say that the results were far from what they expected. Take King Chulalongkorn of Thailand, for example, who ruled from 1868 to 1910. This guy did a lot of good things in terms of modernizing his country, and he was also a formidable baby maker, just as his father had been before him. He was the son of King Mongkut, who had a total of 82 children, including Chulalongkorn. Following in the footsteps of his father, Chulalongkorn mated with almost 116 women, including wives, consorts, and concubines. In an attempt to keep the bloodline pure, he had several children with his half-sisters. He had one kid with one sister who died hours after his birth. With the other sister, the king had 8 kids. One lived for 3 days, and the rest didn't make it to adulthood. The king of Thailand had a total of 77 children, and most of them didn't live very long. A lot of them died when they were barely out of their infant clothes. To further understand the possibility of two people repopulating the planet, it's also important to understand how well the population will adapt. You need to consider DNA. It contains 23 pairs of chromosomes packed inside it. There are hundreds of thousands of genes on each chromosome. These substances will determine human features such as hair color, but some of them are also downright nasty. That's just putting it mildly. Every gene has a couple of copies. These are called alleles. Let's put it this way. When two individuals have a kid, they each give the kid one pair of shoes. Some genes are dominant and recessive. When a dominant pair of genes is handed down to you, you will inherit the characteristic of that gene. It's different with recessive genes because you need both pairings of genes to get the phenotype. For example, if one parent has a dominant gene for brown eyes, then there's a higher chance of the kid having brown eyes. But because the gene for blue eyes is recessive, the situation is different. To get blue eyes, you'd need both recessive genes. Both of your parents passed on blue-eyed genes for this example. If one of your parents had the brown-eyed gene, you'd have brown eyes as well. Unless they're twins, not all children receive the same DNA from their parents. You acquire 50% of your DNA from each parent, for a total of 100%. Still not sure what we're talking about? Consider your mother's DNA to be half a deck of cards. When the next kid is born, the pack is shuffled so that the following child does not inherit the same DNA as the previous one, including all of the same genes. If there were many children, and you kept shuffling the pack, certain sets of genes would eventually resemble those of another child. We're not here just to give you all the bad news. The good news is that recessive genes carry any faulty features. This is wonderful because they aren't very common, and you'll need a pair to gain that dangerous attribute. If your parents are connected by blood, there's a higher chance both possess a faulty gene, and in that case, the child may inherit a pair. If one thing leads to another, their child could be born with some type of deformity. Even with all that shuffling, if there are generations from the same gene pool, harmful genes will match up at some point. Let's look at another example from Pingalap, an isolated island area in the Western Pacific. The whole population descends from barely 20 survivors of an 18th century hurricane that struck the island. Because of the island's limited gene pool, 1/10 of the population is colorblind. Pretty crazy, isn't it? When small groups of people are separated for way too long, they become vulnerable to the founder effect. This occurs when the population's genetic idiosyncrasies are amplified due to a lack of genetic variety. The new people would not only look and sound different, they may even be a completely different species. The royal families of Europe in the 19th century were live examples of the dangers of inbreeding. The Spanish Habsburgs are another example of how this happens, with 9 generations of planned marriages between cousins, uncles, and nieces within the span of 200 years. The most notable casualty of the family was Charles II. The monarch didn't learn to walk until he was 8 years old, despite having a long list of physical and mental problems. His sterility as an adult resulted in the annihilation of an entire dynasty. So how many people do you actually need to reproduce? According to research, the dispute dates back to the 1980s, when an Australian scientist offered a universal rule of thumb. To avoid inbreeding depression, you'll need 50 breeding individuals and 500 to adapt. It's a guideline that's still used today to inform the IUCN Red List, which catalogues the world's most endangered species. With that being said, it's now being increased from 500 to 5,000. This accounts for random losses as genes are transmitted from one generation to the next. So back to our original question. What if there were only a man and a woman remaining on Earth? It's tough to say for sure, but most people are cautiously hopeful. The evidence for limited genetic diversity's short-term impacts is quite strong. There are examples of amazing comebacks from the verge of disaster. This means at the end of the day, anything is possible. The truth is that scientists aren't sure how humankind originated in the first place, but they don't believe it started with 2 people in the Garden of Eden. They know there were many varieties of humans, the Homo genus, hanging around in Africa a couple of million years ago, such as Homo habilis, handyman, and Homo erectus, upright man. Before Homo sapiens, the oldest type of humans, Homo neanderthalensis, mixed with younger forms of humans, Neanderthals. Modern people and Neanderthals mated as well. So it wasn't as if there was a limited gene pool. So could 2 people repopulate the planet? Maybe. Hopefully we'll never get to a point where we have to find out. Only 2 people from our species will be around to get the answer. Humanity is a wild thing. There's just so much to learn. Let's keep the conversation going with a couple more related videos, shall we? Here's what you need to know. Check out 13 things that would happen if dinosaurs were still alive. You should also watch our cool new video on things you never knew about the International Space Station. Go ahead, click one, or better yet, watch both, and learn more about life and the world around us. What are you curious about? Let us know in the comments below.